Bueno, desde la licenciatura de Diseño, Arte y Tecnología estamos muy contentos y muy excitados de recibir a Ofri Cnaani, artista multimedial, que nos va a hablar de su obra en esta conferencia Nuevos Territorios. La artista israelí está por primera vez, ¿verdad?, en Uruguay, first time here, presentando su videoinstalación Territorios con Fugas, que pueden visitar quienes no lo hayan hecho aún en el subte municipal hasta el 8 de abril. Voy a hablarles un poquito de ella. Ofri es artista y educadora, profesora asociada en el Departamento de Culturas Visuales de la Universidad de Londres, profesora invitada en TU Bien, Austria, e investigadora en la Universidad de Ámsterdam. Como artista medial, realiza performances, instalaciones, siempre con una visión crítica y activa respecto a la tecnología. Su trabajo ha sido expuesto en los principales museos y espacios culturales del mundo. Déjenme a ver si encuentro acá para contarles. Tate Britain en el Reino Unido, Bienal de Arquitectura de Venecia, Museo Metropolitano de Arte de Nueva York, Instituto Inhotim de Brasil, Museo de Israel, Museo Amos Rex de Helsinki, Museo Kasima, también en Helsinki, en el MoMA de Nueva York, Laboratorio del Guggenheim. Bueno, creo que es bastante, ¿no? Creo que tiene una trayectoria importante. Algo que a mí me llamó particularmente la atención, además de la obra específica que viene a presentar hoy, es este proyecto con la Estación Espacial Universal, with the space station. This is amazing. I want so much to talk about this.
Okay, so I have it at the end. So I'll make sure to go.
Out of program. Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Un aplauso. Bienvenida, Ofri.
Thank you so much, Fabian, and thank you, everyone. Today, I'm going to speak in English. So, but Roxana is here, so if you get stuck, let us know. And what I was hoping to do is to actually speak a little bit about, or start with the project that is now shown in Subte. It's really, really important story, not important art, but important story and interesting. And I'll tell you a little bit about the story and how I maybe turn it into a video project, and then show a few other works, and maybe we'll end with we'll move from the museum to the city, to the kind of urban terrain, to space. Okay, so we'll, from inside to outside, and then to outside of this world, through 3 different projects. So we'll start from a short video.
Of course, I want to tell everything, but the question is, when is the appropriate time to release or finish?
Eu fui fazer a prova e eu lembro da primeira vez que eu fui no parque, saltando ali em São Cristóvão, entrando na Quinta da Boa Vista, e tem aquele riozinho, né, que corta o parque, em volta do parque, aquela lagoa. Tinha uma água esverdeada, assim, e eu olhava para aquilo, e lembro que eu vi uns patinhos, umas crianças brincando. Eu achava tão bonito. E aí eu subi as escadas e me deparei com o museu.
I have not been able to see it again after time, in fact. It's too cruel. But I'll do it for you. So, let's go. Oh, there. Now, to the left. Go to the right. Which, from what point of view, right?
A Quinta da Boa Vista, durante grande tempo,
foi ponto de prostituição, ponto de tráfico, era praticamente abandonada, assim. Então tinha muita violência dentro do Museu Nacional, tinha ponto de prostituição local na frente ali da fachada do museu. E por estar no dia a dia, sempre os porteiros, os vigilantes permitiam que as prostitutas, os capetões, ou seja lá quem for, os traficantes ficavam por ali, usassem os banheiros, bebessem uma água, podiam falar. Eles só não se envolviam na questão do dia a dia, mas eles sempre conviveram com eles.
So, in 4 years ago, almost 5, in one long night in 2018, it was weekend, Saturday afternoon, a fatal fire, a very dramatic fire started in the National Museum of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. It was a huge building. It was first a Portuguese palace, then turned into the National Museum of Brazil. And it started in an error, a short circuit and in the air condition system. But the museum was already in a very kind of shabby condition. And what sometimes starts as a small error, I would suggest unfold as some sort of a crisis in the making. So it started from one wing and then expanded. Just to orient you a little bit of what mega museum, what a giant project it was. So the National Museum of Brazil kind of hold 20 million objects in its collection. It was a museum of material culture, but also a national history museum, and it was part of the university, so it also had a big archive of the many, many, many cultures that is under this frame, the national framework of Brazil. So just to orient you a little bit, this is a headpiece, an indigenous headpiece. And this is a Chikuna mask, one of the earliest in the collection. And this is Luzia, the oldest human remain ever found in Brazil that is about 12,000 years ago, and one of the most, or maybe the most famous object in this collection. But they also had dinosaurs, because again, it was also National History Museum, and thousands of butterflies and anthropoids from the Amazonas, and this Chilean mummy that was found seated and stays seated for the entire life of the museum. But also a major linguistic archive with recording on different, CD-ROMs and tapes of many indigenous languages that are no longer practiced. And that was the only record, and now are basically gone forever. The meteorite, survived no problem. This meteorite experienced higher temperature in its life. And I like to look at this picture because it took 6 hours for this fatal fire to happen. And people, the big community of the museum, were standing there. It was a very, I would say, performative event, because they discovered there was no running water in the fire hydrant. So what I started, and I said before, it started with an error, a shortcut in the air condition, slowly being kind of unfolded. It's like, wait, why wasn't, running water? Because water and other natural sources in Brazil, but in many places around the world, including my origin country, are being privatized and being politicized. So sometimes there are cuts in budgets. There are cuts in museum budget, but also cuts in, in the water supply. I would actually say that this horrible event that happened in Brazil, but already happened in other places, and will unfortunately happen in other places, archives, collections, rare libraries that are being, are being governed by neglect, are being neglected by governments, and the everyday life is budget cuts and infrastructure and maintenance, poor maintenance. But then when it comes together with climate crisis, when fire is going like that or flooded, it will unfortunately happen more and more. And that's why I would like to offer this event to you, not really as like, oops, an error, but a crisis in the making, a long time coming crisis. So this event was described as a lobotomy. Lobotomy is cutting one of the brain. Lobotomy in Brazilian memory. But the reason I started to look at this event is not so much because of Brazil. I actually spent a lot of time in Brazil and also showed there, but I'm not Brazilian and I'm not going to speak on the Brazilian case from Brazilian perspective. This is not my perspective. But I did, however, had a very important perspective to tell about this story. So first I can say that a lot of my practice are actually dealing with museums, with collections, with digital collection, with the objects that are always in the storage and never come up to the galleries, and all the dramas of the storage, but also education and mediation services. So I like to think sometimes that some people paint and other people are editing movies, and my medium is museums. I really work with museums and museum staff a lot. But as Fabian mentioned, I also research and looking a lot about technologies and thinking critically about technologies. So the reason I got into the story is that you are what we call born digital, right? You were born after the internet. All your life is networked life, not only digital, but networked life. You consume most of the services from dating to eating to health management through apps, right? And you use this device, mine is there, that very device, to do a lot of the things in your life, right? So, and not only, we are living in digital age, but we also living in an age of hyper documentation. We document everything. We can't even think without documenting. Sometimes people in birthday party, they take, 15 minutes videos, like, who is going to watch a 15-minute video of a clown and a baby? But people almost cannot look at the things, all of us, without documenting them. Sometimes when a little kid grab your phone, a cousin or a kid, and they take pictures, they're like, how they... In a second, you have like 200 new images in your phone. We are in hyper documentation. And we also in the age of algorithmic management, algorithmic reproduction. Those images are never only on my phone. They're on my phone, on my WhatsApp group, on my social media, so they keep reproduce. But what I found shocking is that at the age of hyper documentation, not only 20 million objects pretty much are gone, but also almost nothing survived in a digital realm. And I was like, how not? So, and then I started to look at what happened, and I can tell you a lot, and we can speak about it later if you have questions, about the politics of digitization and digital collection, which is not less complicated as of the politics of museums and national identity, but I can already tell you this is a very, very, very time-consuming and expensive process to digitize a collection. So this museum, which was in a short, operated on a short budget, didn't have a digital collection. So I started to look at what survived. And what survived is a small group of 3D objects. made by different entities, different groups, by different grants. So each one is sitting on a different platform, working with not the same parameters, but it's not like all the models are the same, but there is a small group. But then two other things happen. On the night of the event, I told you 6 hours, right? People are standing there, seeing the museum collapse, and students actually from the university who worked at the museum started a campaign via Wikimedia, which is the roof of our organization of Wikipedia that think about kind of democratic information and open access to information. They started a campaign, and the day after it went from national campaign to international campaign. And what they ask people to upload any picture they took in the museum. Selfies, pictures of my kid, blurred picture, double picture, everything. And what we have is a very ghostly, very personal, right? If the museum always tell a professional expert story and take expert photos. Even for this event, we have someone who actually knows how to take photos, right? Expert photos. Those photos were bad or poor. I mean, I think they are poor in a very rich way, but they are subjective, they are blurred. It's kind of a very, a very non-professional collection of images, and it's user-generated. There are no images from the institution, so it's absolutely 100% user-generated collection, but it's the only collection we have. Right? There's no the institutional versus the user. That's the only one we have. And if I start to look, and you are, studying media, technology, design, so I'm sure you have a, eye for that. If I start to look at these images, from one hand we can say, oh, these are poor, bad images, you see reflections. But actually, those are very rich images. So we see this mummy looking at the camera, right? In a way like that. But we also know it was summer, right? We know it was summer. We also know that it looks like a female took this image, right? And we also know quite a lot. Look at this moment and this moment. Look, as female body took this image. So we see both the object and the subject, right? The painter, but also this woman and this woman. She's an object. There is like some kind of babushka, like a Russian doll element here of the images. And we know a lot about the technology of the museum. We see the vitrina, we see the lights, we see a lot about how it actually been kept. And this one is my favorite, I think, image, because all the butterflies are pinned to the, to the board in a very classic way, but they all came from the Amazona, and then the lush greenery of the Amazona, because of the reflection, is kind of coming back to visit. And look at this, it's almost like another butterfly, which is the butterfly of the photographer's hand. So all those images are kind of bad and very, very curious at the same time. Every file name is different. People upload from their own phone, so every file name is different. Some of them are very professional, with the species name, but others called Dino and Sophia 11. So this school-age Sophia and her stuffed purple monkey is like a princess, is like a new protagonist of this collection, with the dinosaur Dino and Sophia like that, and Dino and Sophia like that. And we would never know who Sophia was, but at the same time, she kind of organized the collection. We have a few hundred images, and we have like 15 images of Sophia in there. So this is a very uneven collection, but yet very, very interesting one. Now remember, I spoke about algorithmic reproduction. One of the things I found so interesting is that the images that have been uploaded are never a single image. In museum, the economy of meaning are related to the rare. we only have one rare glass of, of water that we found. This is very rare. No one else have it, and we should show it in the museum. But in the age of reproduction, the meaning coming from a very different way. So it's actually related to how the image is not separated, but how it is networked. Okay, we call it the networked image. So every image that's been uploaded to the collection is also on my phone. Let's say I'm Sophia's mother, okay? So it's also on my phone. And then when I left the museum with my cute girl Sophia, I shared it in the WhatsApp group to the family, and then I put it on Instagram, and then I put it on Facebook, and then maybe my phone is dying because it's too old, so it's on my SD card, but now I trashed it, and now it's been sent to Cameroon to be disentangled, and the SD card is actually on the other side of the world. So every image, in a way, is a collection of images. And why I use this word, because when we think about a national collection, so collection is the most important thing in, it's the national collection of Brazil, it's the national collection of Israel, and the museum is holding the collection. But now every single image here is a collection of images. So almost like we have a collection of collection. And if we think about digital culture, this is a very interesting thing that happened here. But so one thing that survived is user-generated, spread out, completely subjective and individual. The other thing that survived is quite the opposite. I like to think about the user-generated. In English, you say recollection is something that comes back to memory, right? Let me recollect what happened and tell you. So I would say the user-generated is from collection to digital recollection. Now I want to show you something else. This is the other thing that survived, and you saw it in the video, is a virtual tour made by Google. So those virtual tours that you can go to different places. So actually, there's no museum anymore. But if you want to visit a museum, you can go online. So you can actually visit a no longer existing museum. Usually when I go to the Louvre in the virtual tour, it's like, oh my God, I'm in my place in London, but I can be in the Louvre. But now you can visit a no longer existing museum in an interesting way, because those virtual tours are made by the exact same device, camera, that is doing the street view, which is developed by the CIA, surprise, and then been developed. Google bought the technology and developed it. And it's been the same camera that has 9 eyes, 9 cameras, and it's moving. And it's the same camera that document museum, document the street, document the Luna Park, and document, which is, again, you think about digital culture. It's quite interesting that the same device made by a private company is documenting the entire world at the same way, right? So this is quite interesting. So I would say, and what Google is doing, what's their business? Search, right? And by search, they are collecting images, and then they use algorithms to collect more and more and more. And they use correlation of information. You look for this one more. In Amazon they say people who bought this one also bought this one. People who like this book also like this book. So this is a correlation. They find correlations in the data. So if the first one is from collection to recollection, this one is from collection to correlation. So the fact that it is a museum of Brazil, it matters maybe to us. But basically Google's business is document the entire world to create more and more data to correlate. So I think what survived in the digital realm, the digital remains, are actually tiny, but they are offering us much more knowledge about how museum collection going to the digital and how they are entangled, how they are complex, with much bigger systems that define what knowledge is today. So in this video that I hope you'll go and see, it's in Supte, I used the digital remain, the virtual tour, the 3D objects, and the collection of user-generated as sites of information, of sites of creation. So like, someone is making an art piece and they're putting it in the plaza. That's the site. So for me, the site is a digital site. So for instance, I invite people, so it was during the Corona time, and I didn't want to go to Brazil. It's not a documentary. And also the museum is gone. And I was only interested in what survived in the digital. So I told people, I started from people who study in the museum, and people who clean the museum, or people who work in education, and I got all the way to the director of the museum. And if I would come to Brazil and we'll walk to the museum, I would say, like, meet me in the museum, let's walk in the museum or go to the. So I told them, let's meet in the virtual tour. And we met over Zoom in the virtual tour. I opened it, and we tried to navigate, which was very, very hard. But we spoke about images, objects they like. So I used really the virtual tour as some kind of host for our meeting and my research. The result is a 3-channel video installation that kind of tell the story of the museum, but it's also a reflection about digital information and digital time and like many other, and like how to work with those objects to create maybe new meaning. So this is, so maybe to take one moment that I really like, you know what, let's just move on. I'll just, okay, so I'll just kind of connect and finish that and say that I took different things that happened during that time, including this image that you saw that people tattooed the museum on their skin, and started to look at what remained, not as something that we need to save, okay, but really, so what remains is not only an object that survived, but what remains is also the rage and the pain and the story on people's tattoo. And for 2 weeks, the result of the fire, there was a cloud of ashes all over Rio de Janeiro. And what was in these ashes? Parts of the collection, it landed on people's doorsteps. So I really try to think about what survived in the body and in the material and also in the data as a way to think after the museum. So this is one project, and again, I hope you'll come to see. Now I want to show a very different project. So I'm going to jump between 3 projects. And it's called Statistical Bodies, where I use my own body to think about the relation between, again, body, data, and space. So this one called You Are My Statistical Body. And by this name, I think about my body not as a place that I like or don't like, or my, weight, or the way that it looks, and you look at me. But I look at my body as, there is a term in statistical bodies, bodies of information, of numbers, of statistics. So I look at my body as something that is a source to extract information. When we think about extraction, we think about, let's say, extraction of gold from the land. But our bodies are used for extraction of knowledge, of data that turn into profit in many different ways. And this profit, or the business of the data, is oftentimes used for prediction, right? How people will use their money, how people will buy, where we need the most Uber drivers at the point. So the data is used for prediction of, that can be monetized, can be produce more money, right? So I took different kind of old, occult in the style, occult? Yeah, but in occulto, yeah. So like all the different practices of knowing the body and of prediction, of future prediction, and connect them with data system of knowing the body. So I'll give you an example. This one, what is it? Reminds you of? Acupunctura, right? Acupuncture, right? So I use my hands, and in acupuncture there are pressure points. So are the same pressure points, but in these pressure points you have the big one and then you have the small one. You have all this side which is social, so it's related to financial history, the debts that I have, the hobbies and activity, the fitness and the wellness, because from your watch, we can collect how many steps you did, how is your breath, so how much you exercise you did, which is actually connected to the chance to give you insurance or to give you, a mortgage. Those things are in data correlation, are actually very, very much related. And here I have very kind of hard information, work address, school records, bank account, education, state data, like ID and stuff like that, real name, my own name, location at the moment, geolocation information, and more and more and more. So I turned these into what is called data points. Okay, so all they turn into data points in a way that I think is both kind of funny, but also very concerning, because all those information, then acupuncture, these called the pressure points. But these data points are also pressure points, right? Because you can not get your insurance, so these are being extracted from you, and are being used sometimes for you and sometimes against you in different ways. This is another one that the system of phrenology. Phrenology is an extremely problematic and racist systems of, I don't know if you know those heads that, this is like people make kind of an analysis of the skull of where everything sits, and then the reason I'm saying it's very racist, because it mainly was developed in Northern Europe, but then they took skulls of black slaves, let's say, and showed how their level of intelligentsia is lower than the white men and stuff like that. So what looked like a very medicalized system of information, being always connected to power, to the color of your skin, to your race and your gender. And I would argue, based on a lot of research made by brilliant people, that also algorithms are a very oppressing system that is full with racial biases, full with gender biases, the far away from power you are, algorithms know you less as an individual and more as a bigger group. If you're interested, I can refer you to the literature, and there are also a lot of videos about it. But it's all go under the umbrella of algorithmic biases. So here I used. So all they did is they measure differences, measure the difference between my eye to my ear, and if it's very close, I'm like that. And in my nose is like that. It says something about my race or my personality. And if my forehead is flat or my nose, so use the measurement of the body to actually make a lot of very, very, very ideological assumptions about my personality. So I, again, use this system of prediction, which is an old one and highly problematic, but I introduced different data measurements. I'll read them. The distance between my keyboard and my eyes are 7 short messages and the right to be forgotten. So these are very kind of poetic, but they also use my media, the relationship between myself and my media in different way. The distance between my belly and my heart goes through my password manager. The distance between my yawn and your clapping goes between Zoom's voice recognition. The distance between my face and the wallet goes through my digital credentials, and so on and so forth. In this one, which I really like, is kind of using different, this group of technologies and apps we called quantified self. So quantified self is anything that quantifies, use quantity to know the self. And I think it's one of the most interesting group of media that developed today, because the banks collect information of you, and you have to give the details. You don't always want to do, but in groups of in quantified self, users actually share willingly their information. So it starts from a running group. Okay, how many steps I did today? How much how fast I ran? But it also goes to today through wearable devices, you can measure pretty much everything: sleep patterns, breathing patterns, anxiety patterns based on like eyes movement and sweat level. You all know it. I mean, I can measure my period. I can measure my excitement. I can measure my blood level. I can measure pretty much everything. And I want you to notice that the capitalist sensorium is traveling deeper or circulating deeper and deeper into my body. And in this group of text, that all look like circulation of information, but I actually made a list that, unfortunately, maybe I'll take my computer, I can read it, some of you, because it's hard to read here, but of things that are always, because that's my interest, that there are always things that drop out. So the old story, the same old issue of anxiety. The pathetic hope that someone will understand you without words. The social fatigue, the rage, the mental exhaustion, the inability to relate, the flesh, and more and more and more, the boring bits, the cruel optimism of applying, the skin that can see, and more and more and more. And if you'll come to Sute, you see that a line like the skin that can see is very related also to what I've done there. This one is, to make those smart, small, nice devices, we actually need a lot of different material, land-based material that need to be extracted in crazy levels, from lithium to aluminum to titanium to platinum. And here I organize again. I took the old, or the occult, I would say, knowledge of knowing the self through rare stones and rare minerals that we all know. So it's kind of collection between spiritual and data and body in different ways. So I'm holding those precious stones, but those precious stones are organized by countries. Bolivia, Chile, Korea, Argentina, and Gabon, Zambia, but also by minerals, tin, silver, aluminum, lead, titanium, and each group is also by the part of the machine, of the phone. So it goes battery. These are goes for the battery. Circuits, speakers, vibration, electronics, and so on and so forth. So each one is a diagram of material, body, data, and power. This one is, again, based on palm reading, which is a system, non-system, spiritual or whatever, occult or non-Western or whatever, that is considered, again, by women, by witches, by not like, system of enlightenment of Western white men system of knowledge, but I connect it to, and in palm reading, oftentimes you've been asked questions. Also in horoscope, you've been asked question, but I connected it to a very different kind of question. And it's, do you sometimes work for free? Do you daydream frequently? Do you feel accomplished? So these are based on questionnaires that people been asked in their workplace, but they are, turned around it. So are you bored? But then it ends with, or not ends, but some of them are, did you get raised lately? And did your rent went up lately? So this system of working all the time. We are all working all the time. In digital age, we have hardly a separation between work time and leisure time. And the way that the companies often ask that and worried about our mental health is actually very much related to productivity, right? Because if you feel very lonely, or you're very depressed, or you're, cannot function, you're also very non-productive for the corporation. So I'll just show here that I oftentimes use platform like WhatsApp that everyone is using, but I don't use it to text with you, but I use it to a performance. So everyone in the group will join a WhatsApp group, and then I'll send you messages, and we'll see the city in a different ways through very simple existing technologies. I'm an artist that work with technology, but I don't invent new technologies. I don't write code. I love artists who do that, but I don't do that. But I look at technology critically, and I also use existing technology like WhatsApp, I would say, as wrong tool, like wrongly, not to the way, and different way. And that's something I think each one of you should consider. Well, it's called chain reaction. And just to end with the International Space Station. So last year in April, an astronaut from Israel went to space, and privately, in one of the first time that people not from NASA going privately to space. And he spent, together with other 3 men, 8 days in the International Space Station. And during those days, he, or the foundation that sent him, commissioned scientific mission, educational mission, but also artistic mission. And I was one of the 11 artists that been selected to work on this artistic mission. Each one did something completely different. And what I did, which is actually similar to what I did with the WhatsApp, every day I sent him 4 lines. And every day he took pictures of his everyday routine that kind of illustrate those lines, those ideas, and send them back to me. It was supposed to be that every day I receive those images and work and create a performance live. But of course, it took NASA 3 months to okay those images. So I got them much later. And now I'm working on a piece that's called ground control, but then it says when the horizon become a frontier. So I kind of think about the space as the new colonial destination. You know, when the difference between horizon and frontier, that the horizon always stays an horizon. And frontier is something that we want to reach to. And if we look at colonial practices, what happened in colonial practices, that there is an interchange relation between horizon and the frontier. Oh, the Americas, it's there, let's go there. Change between horizon to frontier. And I think in many ways that's what happened in what we call the new space. That the horizon, what we would never get to because it's out of this world, now became a frontier. We want to concord. We want to occupy. We want to be there. We want to live there. We destroy this planet. We want to go to another planet. So my idea is to kind of think of how can I tour a place that I would never be in. I have no intention to go. And also because I think with visuals, how do technology see this image of the space station, and also how kind of an investigation of the images of space and that orbit our space, okay? Because there are so many images of space from inside and from outside, although we've never been outside. I mean, most of us, he was, have never been and would never be outside of the planet. But we have loads of images, of sounds. I don't know, I always look for Spotify playlists about space. Gazillions of playlists about space. Gazillion of images about space. But we've never been there, so our information is very skewed, and that's what I'm very much interested in this project. So I think this is part of, yeah, and this is from an old performance of mine that's called Wrong Tools. But I basically, if I need to summarize everything, I want to invite each one of you to think about technology and the relation between ideology, power, and technology and visuals, but use it, but wrongly, you know. And that's yeah, and that's pretty much where we end. So.
Tenemos unos minutitos para preguntas. Primero que nada, soy un anfitrión terrible y me olvidé de presentar a Roxana Fabius, curadora de la muestra y trabaja con Ofri desde hace muchos años en Nueva York, ¿verdad? Bueno, Roxana, que habla inglés mucho mejor que yo, nos va a ayudar, si puede ser, a traducir algunas preguntas. Mientras estos jóvenes que usan la tecnología de manera errónea, eso es un poco uno de los objetivos de nuestra licenciatura, we use the technology in a wrong way. So,
good.
We are a family. Quería aprovechar a hacer un par de preguntas. No quiero monopolizar la charla, pero me gustaría saber la opinión de Ofri acerca de, basándome en su presentación de la obra que está exponiendo sobre el Museo de Brasil, ¿qué opinión tiene sobre los entornos virtuales más allá de Google, ¿verdad? De Google Street, Metaverse Environments, and la posibilidad de digitalizar en 3D?
Your opinion, yeah,
About?
digital environments.
Yeah, and la última pregunta. Bueno, hoy por hoy estamos en este furor de la inteligencia artificial. Hace 3-4 días, porque las noticias son day by day, surge Firefly de Adobe. Es una herramienta que permite, bueno, trabajar con imágenes a un nivel que nunca creo yo, nunca pensamos. Entonces, la reflexión es cómo piensas que afecta o que puede colaborar o no estas tecnologías en la conservación, en la producción, sobre todo desde la perspectiva museística, que es la que tú trabajas.
Yeah, so this is really a great question because, I mean, you know, there are two sets of main question for around AI and I would say the arts field. There are gazillions question about AI. Some of them related to, you know, if there are, you know, the misuse and misuse of AI in different fields. But I would say, and within the world of visual culture, I think a lot of people ask question of like, it's the end of creativity, it's the end of the art world, da 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 da, which is a big one. I will just say in a second that I mean, you only need to go back to early days of photography or go back to different technological and visual revolutions to maybe understand or to kind of relax yourself and say, like, the tools change. But I think us as creative minds and also critical minds, because if we think creativity is making images, maybe it's limited. But if we understand that the creativity is oftentimes think with wrong tools, and also be critical, the connection between creativity and criticality, and noticing the kind of the relation to power is always something we can apply differently. And I have quite a few projects that I'm using AI in different way, mainly actually text-based, less images. But these also change all the time. So to try and stop the technology or to try and kill creativity, I feel are two pointless arguments. But I think our role is to think about what technology, I mean, we can contribute to making technology, but also use existing or on-the-go developed technology to tackle the questions differently, to think about them. And I'll give an example from the world of museum. So, you know, when we look at objects in museums, we think, oh, this is museum professionals told us the truth about this lamp. It came from here, it was made in this year, it was da-da-da-da-da-da. But I can tell you, you know, from years of studying museums, that museums are first, you know, colonial institutions. Also, they tell the story from a very skewed, okay, like we do in Photoshop, skewed perspective, and they tell a story that they want to tell. So the object is working here for someone. The object is working for a specific ideology. And this is a speculation. What they tell about the object is, you know, like writing a story. It's invention like every other good story. It's fiction. So we can now, today, use digital culture and AI to fictionalize otherwise, to think about other fictive stories. And I'll give one example of an artist who is Iraqi-German named Nora El-Badri, who took the digital collection of like an anthropology museum in Germany, but she used images from from her own geography. So it's not Iraq, but Mesopotamia and like ancient Fertile Crescent, okay, so for the same geography of Iraq. And she took the digital collection and she threw in, I don't know which image generated she used, but basically she threw in thousands of images, digital images, and she let the AI to create fictional, invented images that are based on different mesh of different existing, in AI, it's a very limited set of images, but And basically, those are gorgeous images that then you can print out in 3D or you can just show them in digital. And then she took them and insert them into the collection. So like a viruses in the collection. And since it's only digital collection, you can't tell, oh, this was actually found in Mesopotamia and this one is invented. And she created fictional images in the collection to tell us, well, the German fantasies about Mesopotamia or Iraq are full with biases, ideologies, relation to power, fantasies, in this case, is what the East is or what, the Americas are. I mean, these are all full with very ideological fantasies. And she used AI in a fantastic way to comment about how ideological, but also how fictive, museum collections are.
¿Cómo se hizo, hablando del Museo de Brasil, para mantener esta esencia de la que hablaba, que siempre, esta esencia museística de como mantener una ideología y explicar las cosas a través de cierta ideología, si ahora la colección es como compartida por el público, digamos?
It's a great question. Of course, because museums are museums and mainly governments are governments, the day after they hashtag Viva Museu Nacional, and then what they want to do is to rebuild the museum. So this is, I would say, very expected by governments. But this is not where the interesting stuff happen. And I'll give 3 very quick examples where what I think there is a potential of interesting way. One is that because so in this museum there were quite few indigenous researchers and cultural anthropologists who work with cultures in the Amazonia for a very, very long time. And one of the things that they always say is that the way they presented sacred indigenous objects, let's say by Chikuna, was so, I would say, pornographic in a way that they just said this is a cup. But it's like, no, for us it's not a cup, it's a sacred object that not everyone is allowed to see, and it's actually put you in a specific kind of spiritual, mental space. You can't just show it like that. So they were so uninformed, so the display was actually very offensive for many people. So one of the things that happened now, and if you want, there's a very good article at the New York Times about it, and it's been actually translated even to Hebrew, so I'm sure it's been translated to Spanish. It's a very good article that tells how there is a lot of critique about the museum all over the world, the big museum being colonial. So they say, hey, there is an opportunity here. Not in this case, it's not through the digital, but there is an opportunity because, as the Americans say, there is a ground zero. The museum is gone. So now they curate, let's say, the Chikuna collection with Chikuna scholars and activists, which is maybe the dream of other places, but they can't really do it. So I won't say that all the museum will be like that, but there are some very, very responsible scholars in these museums. They're doing few very interesting things of how can you take this system of museum, which is colonial. The index is colonial. The idea of museum is a colonial, right? There aren't so many museums in general in the global south that in Northern Europe, because it's a Northern Europe idea museum. So, but how do you take this colonial idea but shape the collection in a dialogue? So that's one thing. The other thing is that, as you say, this user-generated collection has a chance to become a different model, and it's more accountable model. It's a model that is thinking about repair in a way. But because this is not so many people uploaded. It's not like many images. This is maybe a few hundreds. It's not enough. But I'm involved with my own research and other people who really think about let's say, a non-state entities like Wikipedia and others, which use only user-generated image as a way of healing, as a way of kind of thinking away from the wrongdoing and the terror, I would say, of the Colonial Museum, in a way that we can think, transition into more justice collection through the digital. And my personal thinking is, if museums say the human in the center, right? Human is the most important, and I like meteorite, and I like dinosaurs, and I say, the humans say what's important in the world, and the world is organized around the human. So I'm trying in my research to show what surviving in matter, in the body and in the data, can be new alignments. Not that the human is in top and organize all the world around it, but kind of new alignments that, again, they're thinking about technologies not of the rarity, but technologies of abundance, technology of different connections. And this idea of technologies of healing, because as I show, Google is the big bully in the block exactly the same way as the colonizer or the museum. And there's a term that's my writing. I write about digital colonialism. So how can we think about technology, small technology, not because Google wants to be big, it's very colonial aspiration. So how can we think about technology in small descaling of technology, local, and one that can heal the wrongdoing, not copying and extrapolate on the same mindset?
Hola, mi pregunta era un poco más personal, no tan general. ¿Cómo se te ocurrió, cómo surgió todo este tema de la cultura, la digitalización, toda la inteligencia artificial que está surgiendo ahora? O sea, ¿de dónde partiste y cómo llegaste a todos estos temas que estás tratando en las presentaciones que estás haciendo?
That's a great question, and my answer is very short. I never know how to start. I can tell you it's never in the beginning. You always start somewhere from the middle. You always is like, well, let's go back and learn what's the background. It never works. You just broke up with your girlfriend, your mom, you had a fight with her, and Corona happened, and you stuck, you can travel, you got travel, and then you meet someone. I had a project, and it was great. So now I think, I have to do it as great as the other one. So I always compare. There's always so many conditions for a project that I can tell, and Roxana know my work for a very long time. I always try many things, many things. Most of them are really bad. And somehow it happened. And me personally, I also, I work with other people. I always in a conversation with other people. And the best advice I can give you, these are your people. You start now. You just started 3 months ago. These are your people. And if you have friends, people you trust their eye, and they committed. Like I know what Roxana is doing in the last 10 years. She knows it's not like we're committed to one another, and I have few friends like that. I always speak with them. Roxana did this project of Brazil. She saw it in the last 5 years. It was all over the place. Now it was messy, without direction, all over the place. But again and again we talk, so that's another way. But you always start somewhere in the middle. You never start at the beginning. And you never know what the ends will look like.
Bueno, excelente.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Por haber venido. A todos en el subte. Hoy hay una visita guiada.
Una visita guiada a las 4 y después tenemos un taller no hablamos de eso, pero tenemos un taller con la coreógrafa Luciana Chuga, una coreógrafa
If you like to
uruguaya.
move, it's amazing workshop. I'm going to participate.
Está muy interesante y es una de las metodologías de investigación que Ofri usa en esta obra, en Leaking Lands, Territorios con Fugas, una metodología que viene del mundo de la danza. Y después Ofri va a hacer una presentación y vamos a tener un conversatorio entre Luciana y Ofri y yo y el público. Así que están todos invitados a las 5 en el subte y a las 4 tenemos una visita guiada.
Perfecto. Nos vemos ahí entonces.